Welcome, everybody, to Vesta. We are happy to have you here with us tonight. At Vesta, our mission is to provide education, connection, and support to help you navigate the divorce process with clarity and confidence. We just celebrated 13 years in existence recently, and Vesta began because the three founders wanted a better experience for those going through divorce. Today's session is focused, as I said, on key financial strategies during and after divorce. We know it's a topic that can feel overwhelming, but it's one that's critical to ensuring your future stability and peace of mind. We're going to get started tonight. We have an experienced panel of professionals tonight who will share insights on preparing for divorce, covering everything from financial health, pre and post divorce, and the legal aspects, your mortgage, your real estate, and your emotional state. Keep in mind that the legal piece tonight is based on New Hampshire law. There are other events through Vesta in other states if you don't happen to be in New Hampshire, but just keep that in mind that the legal piece is New Hampshire law tonight. So we all volunteer our time. All of the professionals on the panel tonight, we don't work directly for Vesta. We each have our own practices, but we volunteer our time to do these webinars so we can help educate you guys. You can work with one of us or you can work with all of us. It's totally up to you. Our first speaker tonight is Adrian. I'm going to take it away, Adrian.
Okay. I'm just waiting for the slide to come up. So before we dive into what you came for this evening around the financial issues that you're facing, I want to let you know how I can be of help to you as you move forward. And my name is Adrienne Beloin, and I'm a psychotherapist and a transformational coach who works with couples on sustaining relationships and then also with individuals and co-parents as they move through divorce and the next steps in their relational lives. I've put my contact information in the chat. So if you want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to follow up, and I offer free consultations. All right. So what I wanted to bring to your attention is actually, before we get into the financial stuff, the cost of not getting divorced. From my standpoint of thinking about emotional and social well-being, despite the modern trends of financial stability post-divorce, the financial standard of living remains a primary barrier for the 45% who stay in misaligned marriages. Those who move through the transition report a significantly higher social emotional standard of living. So I've broken down for you here what those social emotional issues typically are. There's the issue of psychological safety. And when we're in a misaligned marriage, it's often the costs that you're dealing with of staying in that situation, not moving forward and taking the leap into divorce, are things like high conflict, hypervigilance, decision fatigue. I bet you're all feeling like that right now. But the benefits of getting through this process is the eventual opportunity for a peaceful home, presence in your life to focus on mental health and wellness. Another major social emotional issue is equity. This is going to be coming through as compromised values in your current situation, lack of agency. On the other side of this, moving through having aligned actions with your values, having autonomy. Relational intelligence. This is all the pieces that help us have healthy relationships in our lives. And so if you're in one that is unhealthy, you're struggling with insecure attachment. You're struggling with codependency, maybe. You're struggling definitely with loss of identity as you embark on this change. And what you stand to gain from getting through the process is thriving relationships with your authentic self and others. A part that really worries us is what this will do to our family. And something that we want to keep in mind is the costs of what individuals who maybe would benefit from divorce when they're staying together and they're trying to keep things together for children and the family, that everyone's been witnessing dysfunction. They can often have a negative sense of self, and there's often neglect. And the benefits of pushing through this is that you can really have modeled behavior around mutual respect, personal growth, and protection. And the trade-off for the perceived financial hit is a higher emotional net worth. Thanks. I'm not sure who's coming up next.
Sorry about that, Adrian. Next up, we have the legal side of things with Kate and Lori.
Hi, everyone. I am Kate Blake. I am a family law attorney. I'm licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Since this is the New Hampshire hub, this will be focused on New Hampshire law when I do talk about law, although we will be talking about process options, which is more general and maybe also specific to your jurisdiction. My practice encompasses both out of court resolution, helping people through the mediation process, which we'll describe more, collaborative law, as well as direct attorney negotiation. And then a component of my practice is also litigation filing in court. And Lori is also going to present with me. She is an attorney as well. Lori, do you want to just introduce yourself before we get into the substance of it all?
Sure. Thank you. Merci. Okay. Yes. Hello. My name is Lori Barron. I'm also an attorney. I'm licensed in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. I focus my practice on out of court resolution in the areas of mediation and collaborative divorce. I also do estate planning, which is crucial in the divorce process. After the divorce, people need to address their estate plan moving forward. So it's related to divorce. So I also do that. But in terms of the divorce process itself, I focus on out of court settlement. It's my strong belief that with the proper support and the proper guidance, even in high conflict situations or dealing with a seemingly difficult partner, with the right environment and structure, resolution is possible without the high cost of litigation. So that's what I focus my practice on. I'm going to give it back to Kate, but what I'm going to do now is put my information, my contact information in the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to speak with you. I also offer a free consultation, and that provides a space to see what you need, for you to express what you need, and to see how I may be able to help you. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'll give it back to Kate.
Thanks. So I think I want to start with more of the substantive, which is more based on New Hampshire law. And we're going to glaze over it at a very high level because some of the other speakers will address it as well. But at a very high level, things that need to be addressed in your final decree in New Hampshire are division of assets and liabilities, support, which is both child support for a child, which is based on a formula in New Hampshire, and also potentially alimony, which is also based on a formula in New Hampshire, and then parenting. I'm not really going to get too much into the division of assets because I know that some of our other presenters will be talking about that. But with respect to support, as I mentioned, both child support and alimony are based on a formula in New Hampshire. So it really is important to make sure you're identifying income and running those calculations correctly. And then in terms of parenting in New Hampshire, we have a relatively new statute that talks about parents having substantially similar parenting time. And at a minimum, it's going to be 40%, 60-40 division. And then there's also, sometimes we call it legal custody or decision making, and it's a presumption that it's going to be shared decision making. I don't know if there's anything specific in the substantive that you wanted to discuss, Lori.
I'm sorry about I was putting something in the chat about the division of assets.
Yeah, just about a very high level about kind of the substance, like the division of assets, support, or parenting before we move more into process options.
Yeah, certainly. I can, in terms of the division of assets, New Hampshire is an equitable distribution state. Does not mean 50-50 in terms of marital assets. It can be 50-50, although it doesn't have to be. It just has to be fair and equitable, fall within those guidelines of fair and equitable. Certain things are considered marital assets. Certain things are not considered marital assets. So when parties, in terms of mediation, when they come into mediation and they have an idea of what they want in terms of how to divide the assets, that's a great place to start. But what needs to be considered is what the court will accept or would not necessarily require to be considered to be divided, but what would be required to be considered. And I'll let you deal with that in the legal aspect in terms of what's considered separate property, what's considered marital property. But it is definitely something that the parties have to, especially in the in the mediation space, need to understand what the law is regarding what's considered dividable, essentially, or what needs to be considered in that evaluation of the equitable distribution. Same thing with parenting. Obviously, children are not assets, but the court's going to look at what's in the best interest of the children. So what the parents want in terms of an agreement that works for them, it has to fall within what the court finds in the best interest of the children. So I think you touched upon that with the new law and 60/40. So I'll let you get into that a little more. But essentially, what the court is looking for is that each party, and first of all, each party, when they leave the marriage, leaves it relatively whole, not disadvantaged. So they're looking at everything, they're balancing it out. They want to make sure that the children get what they need, the parties get what they need to be able to sustain themselves immediately after the divorce and for the long term. And in doing that, they look at it's a holistic picture of everything. One of the things about child support, that's the child's right to have it. So it's not something that can be bargained away. So I'll let you address that, Kate, in terms of the legalities of it. But, what the court is doing, they're not trying to penalize one party or the other. I know sometimes it feels like somebody gets the short end of the stick when they're going through a divorce. But the lens to which the court's looking at, it's not to give somebody more than the other. It's to look at the whole picture and make sure everything is equitable, fair, doesn't always mean equal. And I think that's really what people need to keep in mind when they're going through a divorce, to consider the legalities of it and the lens through which the court is looking at all of the facts.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll just mention on the property division is that it is equitable, but doesn't necessarily mean equal. But I think the longer a marriage goes on, the more likely it will be equal. And generally speaking, of kind of all assets, regardless of how they were acquired, when they were acquired, or whose name they are in, is a marital asset in New Hampshire. It's a question of how it gets divided. And generally speaking, as you move into a mid to longer term marriage, assets are generally divided equally. And then just in terms of like process options, I think the other thing that we really wanted people to understand is that there isn't like a one size fits all in terms of how to get divorced. And you should be very cautious when you speak with an attorney who hears you want a divorce and is just immediately jumping to filing a petition for divorce, because there are a variety of options that you can use to get divorced. In New Hampshire, those are things, as I mentioned, mediation, collaborative law, and then litigation. So I'm going to let Lori describe the out-of-court process, and then I'll describe the court process in New Hampshire.
Okay. So mediation, as we've said, is an out-of-court process. With that being said, ultimately, in order for a divorce to be final and legal, it has to go before a judge to approve it. So whatever agreement is done during the mediation has to follow all the rules and the laws, but it's a place where the parties are in control of the ultimate outcome. It's very empowering. I tell my clients a lot, you're going to know what the outcome of your divorce will be because you are writing the agreement. You are putting the terms on paper according to what you want. Now, that being said, of course, it has to pass muster before the judge. So assuming you have a skilled mediator that is able to facilitate that conversation and apprise you of what the rules are and help you form an agreement that fits within those rules, then there's no surprise when you go to court for the judge to review it. So there's no what ifs. There's no what will happen. What's going to happen if what you have is approved. That being said, sometimes when you do that and go before the judge, well, questions and things, and might have you clarify some things or might not accept what you have agreed on. But that doesn't mean the agreement won't happen. It'll just need a little bit more work. But that happens in court as well. It's not unheard of for even in divorce litigation when the parties settle for there to be back and forth with the judge until the judge finally approves it. So it's your rights. You still have your rights are protected during mediation. You don't need legal counsel to do mediation, but it's highly advisable to have a consulting attorney help guide you through mediation. And you always have that right. And you don't have to agree to anything you don't want to agree to. And then when you get before the judge and the judge reviews the agreement, if it's completely unbalanced and it's not equitable, it's not going to be approved. So you really have a lot more control over the outcome in a mediation than you do in court, because when you're in court, it's two sides fighting over positions, and the ultimate the adjudicator is the judge, and the judge is going to rule in favor of one or the other. A lot of times the judge will suggest mediation or require mediation because the court wants the parties to be able to come to some sort of agreement for especially when there are children, for long-term stability of that agreement and for the children. So the bottom line is the mediation is a great place to have more control over the outcome, and it's a lot less expensive. And it doesn't mean that both parties have to be on great terms with each other. Mediation can be done where people are in conflict, and that's the whole purpose of mediation, is to address the conflict so possibilities can be explored and resolution can happen. When you're in court, and Kate could attest to this, there really is. It's all about the conflict. It's about winning your side and trying to get what you think you deserve. You can do that at the mediation table as well. It's just a different space. It's just a different forum in which not only are you arguing for what you want, or advocating, I shouldn't say arguing, advocating for what you want, but it's also an opportunity for you to be heard as to why you want it. You don't get that advantage in court. And a lot of times that just having the other party understand why you want something facilitates progress in terms of coming to a resolution. If it's a high conflict situation, as long as both parties are willing to sit down and talk about it, it may not always be pretty, but if the conversation can progress, and facilitation a way to work through those issues that are hindering progress is more likely to happen when you're in that space rather than a courtroom. It's definitely something that even in litigation should be and could be tried. They're not mutually exclusive. You could do mediation while you're in litigation. You could start mediation. Then if it's not working, you can go to litigation and go back when you're in litigation and say, hey, we want to go back to mediation. So they're not mutually exclusive. So it's a tool. It's a tool, and it's very helpful. Collaborative law is a little different. It's the same in a lot of ways. I like to call it a hybrid. I don't know if Kate would agree with me with that, but a hybrid with litigation and mediation, because during mediation, it's you and the other person. You don't necessarily have an attorney in the room with you. But in a collaborative divorce, you have a team, you have an attorney with you. It's structured. There's a support professional as part of the team, but the whole purpose is still out of court settlement. So both parties agree to try to work it out outside of court. And the conversation is still the same because it's the parties talking to each other and trying to work it out with the support of their attorney there and the other support professional. So it's a more structured environment. In mediation, those support professionals are still available, CDFAs and certified divorce mortgage lenders and divorce coaches, they're still available, but they're not an active participant in the actual room during the mediation. And that, in a lot of cases, that's fine as long as the parties are getting the support in some way. Some cases that are a little bit more high conflict benefit from collaborative divorce because it is a structured environment where everybody's present. It really is just a way to avoid the litigation costs and the stress, and to make for an agreement that each party is comfortable with, which makes everything more sustainable in the long term. And especially when you have children, it makes the later years and the rest of the co-parenting time a lot less contentious, and there's a lot less carryover resentment than with litigation, because each party feels that it in fact has been heard and is comfortable with the agreement they have. They're not trying to fight through something that they didn't want in the first place. And I think that's the key difference in litigation and out-of-court settlement, out-of-court resolution. Kate, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so at this point. Do you want me to jump into litigation now?
Yeah, talk about litigation.
Okay. Litigation in New Hampshire starts with the filing of a petition for divorce, and that starts its own process. When you file, there is first you have to get service information back from the court, and that is basically the way to provide notice to the other person that you have started this process. Aside from that, there is certain mandatory discovery that goes into effect with the filing. And I know some of the later presenters are going to be talking about important documents to gather. And I really think that these, at a bare minimum, is a good place to start. And then the court will schedule you and your spouse for something called a first appearance, which is essentially you, your spouse, and other people who have recently filed through the court process. And it is the court essentially educating you about the court process. And then part of what they do is also encourage people to go to mediation. The court does have court mediators. I personally think that private mediation, if you are inclined to do mediation, is the better way to go through that. That would be somebody like Lori. I find that mediation through the court process is for very basic, simple cases where there's really not a lot of contested issues. But the private mediation is better for people who have potentially more complex issues. And it can be done outside of court and not actually in the court process, which I think going to court to do mediation can be awkward for people because you're in that kind of settlement mindset. But here you are showing up at court, whereas mediation privately done can be done by Zoom. It can be done in the confines of the mediator's office. And the other thing that I think is important to know about the court process in New Hampshire is that it is not a quick process if you are in a truly litigated case. On average, those cases take at least a year, if not longer, to resolve themselves. And when I give you that timeline where you've actually entered into a final decree and you've settled your case, not where you are actually needing a trial, you could be looking at 2-3 years of litigation to actually get to a final resolution. And the out-of-court processes that Lori mentioned can be done in less than a year, if not much shorter than that. I don't know that I have anything else on the litigation or generally speaking on legal. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to cover, Lori.
No, I think we've addressed it all. I think the takeaway here from what we both said is that litigation is much more expensive. It takes a lot longer and it increases conflict rather than reduces conflict. And mediation or collaborative divorce is more of a win-win. There's going to be, just like in any settlement negotiations or anything, there's going to be give and take. There has to be a willingness on both parties to give and take. You go to court, it's a zero-sum game. Somebody's going to lose, somebody's going to win. And if you have $1 million to fight over the small stuff, then maybe litigation is for you. But to sit down and to look at the cost and benefit of litigation, spending several $1,000s to fight for something, and I'm not talking about the health, the safety and welfare of the children. I'm talking about assets. I'm talking about the day-to-day things. If you really sit down and look at it and do the cost-benefit analysis, if you realize that it's going to cost you $10,000 to fight in court to get $5,000, you have to figure out at that point what's more important to you, peace and moving on, or sticking it to the other person or proving your point. So if you really look at the cost benefit and figure out what the end result is going to be, the option of the option of out-of-court settlement to address those points might be for you, because you still get to address and try to get what you want at a much less cost than if you went through court. So the bottom line, the point is that you have all of these options. You should choose which works better for you based on what your ultimate desired outcome is and the reality of your current financial situation. So you want to add anything to that?
Okay, no, I think you summed it up well.
Okay, next.
I think we're turning it over to Barb.
Yeah, we have Barb and then Robin up. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So kicking off, my name is Barb Shigog. I am a certified divorce financial analyst and a CPA. So
I'm the numbers person that's part of the team. And what I really love about Vesta is that team approach and attorneys that work with other professionals to really help you out with this very difficult process. So I think when you look at a settlement, and when you're looking forward, I think it's important to recognize 4 components of income that you'll have available to you. So first is the child support, and whether you're in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, Maine, child support is very formulaic. You can all go out if you have minor children to your just even Google New Hampshire child support calculator. You put in a few simple metrics and it spits out a number. Of course, that's just what's called guideline. And the goal for child support is to make sure that both parents can contribute to taking care of the children. And child support is money that is dedicated towards children's expenses. Spousal support, which has been referred to as alimony, most of you know it as alimony maintenance. I think everyone's decided that for some reason spousal support just sounds nicer. Everyone hates paying alimony, so I think people figured if we just change the name of it, it will make it less painful for everyone. Spousal support is, again, somewhat of a formula. So it looks at, if you don't have children, it looks at the difference between your income, the spouse's income, and then applies a percentage to that formula. And again, or to that difference. And spousal support is determined by the length of the marriage, with a 20+ year marriage considered a long-term marriage. And so it's you typically for half the length of the marriage or until retirement. Another source of income that people don't always think about is the actual marital property. So maybe there's a disparity in income, that one spouse makes more than another spouse, or one spouse has the potential to make more income. Then what we try to do is give the other spouse, what makes it equitable is the other spouse is given a little bit more in marital property to make up for the fact that their future earnings might not be as great, or their Social Security might not be as high as the other spouse. And then, of course, employment income is factored into what is not only your income that you make today, income that you could be making if you were working, or possible future earnings. We can flip to the next. So what should you consider from a financial standpoint if you're thinking about getting divorced? One is just get all the documents you can. So really get a handle on bank statements, tax returns, whatever documents you can secure. Most of you have online access or have access to a computer that has online access. So really prepare yourself, because you'll need to produce documents. And the more documents that you can get your hands on before you tell your spouse you want a divorce, or you're thinking about it, it just might be a little bit easier. And you will need a lot of documents. And New Hampshire is governed by Rule 1.25A disclosure. Massachusetts is 410 disclosure. If you were to, again, look those up, it's a considerable list of documents that you need, and you also need it for an extended period of time. Something that you should do is, a lot of times your spouse may have opened up the credit card and you're not the account holder. You are just the participant on it, let's say. So really think about opening up a new credit card. Now, again, all of this is going to have to be disclosed. I'm not saying you should do this to hide money or to spend money. It's just that you want to make sure that you have a credit card that's in your own name and that you're starting to build up your own credit. Same with the bank account. It's always important to have an account that's just in your name for when you need to start separating assets. Again, secure passwords. So if you have family accounts, joint accounts, make sure you know the passwords to those accounts. Also, notice who is the account holder on the account. A lot of times maybe it's one spouse that just happened to go to the bank that day and they set up the account, or a brokerage account might have been just set up in somebody's name. Try to see if the documents, who's on the documents. If you see a brokerage account, is it just in your name or your spouse's name, or is it joint name? Trying to figure out all that, because it really doesn't matter who the legal owner is on an account. All accounts at this point can be considered marital assets unless there's some reason that's making them not. But the legal account holder doesn't necessarily determine if it's marital property or not. You want to make sure you have access to tax returns. This is a really important, really important. And again, make sure if you're considering divorce, make sure you start to build up some emergency funds. Again, I'm not telling you to build up something to hide it, but if you do decide you want to get a divorce and you meet with a mediator or you need to meet with an attorney, you will need some access to funds, or have someone that you know that can get you some funds. It's important if you want to start making some first steps. What should you gather? A shorter list would be, what do you not need? Again, everything. You even need your marriage license, because you'll have to know what the legal names were on your marriage license. Again, it's a pretty extensive list. So it's really bank statements, credit card statements, brokerage statements, 401k. If you're in tax returns, business returns, it's kind of everything. Social security statements are really important to get for you and your spouse. You really need even child-related documents. I always tell my clients, start to get together a list of your child's costs. These are all things that you should talk about. Who's going to pay for some of the very expensive expenses that our children have. It's important to get those hammered out when you are starting to look at putting together a settlement agreement. And again, anything you can get digital is always good, because you will have to disclose. Even if you go to mediation, the mediator will ask you for this information, and it's always easiest to deliver electronically, to get passwords and get access to sites. And then creating a budget. There's two reasons that you need a budget. One, the most important, is your financial statements that you'll have to file to actually get divorced requires you to produce a budget. And that budget is based on what your new life is going to look like. But it's important that you do this even before the state makes you, because really you need to think about your current financial situation. You want to be able to go in and know, what is your mortgage? So if you know that there's no way, my mortgage is $10,000 a month, we bought it thinking we were going to have two incomes, then maybe that isn't something that you want to ask for, if you know that it's not something that you're going to be able to afford going down the road. I meet with lots of clients as they're thinking about getting divorced, because many people come to me, can I afford to do this? And we look at, what is your current situation? And now, I never recommend someone not get divorced just because they think they can't afford it. But I always think it's important to go in with open eyes, and you will be looking at supporting two households on what the same income that you were currently supporting one. So it is important that you have a good understanding of what your expenses are. Sometimes there's always a bill payer in the family, and that might not be you. So it is important to track down, how much does it cost to live in the house that you're living in? Have an understanding on that. And then just even looking going forward, if you have to move, what are other options available for you? And it is important to have an emergency fund, to know that you have some liquidity. I would monitor your credit and make sure that, this is rare, but I have seen it happen, where the spouse has taken out a credit card and somehow your name and your social security number has gotten included on it. And that credit card has a balance on it. So you do want to monitor your credit. And of course, plan for not only, even if you go the mediation route, there will be some costs. So you have to budget for that. How are we going to pay for this? And again, it talks to Lori and Kate when they were talking about various ways you can go through this process, and some more economical than others. So I would encourage you to start with what might be some of the more economical ways and seeing if that works first. And then worst case, you move towards a litigation, but at least you've given something that's been more reasonable a try. And then how to maximize your settlement. I think what's really important is you really understand what you're getting, right? You have one shot at this. Once the settlement's final, then you're looking at it and you can't do a do-over. So it's important that you really understand what you're getting and if there are any tax implications. If, let's say, you get an investment portfolio and if you were to sell it, you'd have tax implications. So to understand, are you getting all retirement assets? Are you getting a house that has a large embedded gain? And these are all important things that even just getting a couple hours of a CDFA's time or another finance professional, just so that you have a real understanding of what you're getting. You could be getting retirement assets and maybe your spouse is getting brokerage assets and yours are going to be taxable and theirs aren't. So it's just really important that somebody from a financial standpoint reviews your settlement agreement. And it's not a large expense when you look at the process. And then you really want to understand what are your needs and your long-term goals. And I guess for this, it's don't forget about your long-term goals. I worry about retirement for clients. So ask somebody to say, this is great. I'm going to get this great big lump of money now. What about retirement? If I haven't been working, I'm not going to get that much about Social Security. So what can we do to adjust for that? That's something really to think about short term, but more importantly, make sure you don't forget about the long term. And then be strategic about spousal and child support. Child support is something that the states mandate, so it's a lot more enforceable. Spousal support also ends if you cohabitate or you get remarried. So you really need to think about how the support is titled and how this might impact you. And lastly, don't go out and do anything new. Don't start spending money because you think you want to burn through cash because right now it's coming out of a joint account. I would encourage you not to do that because that could be traced back to you and you don't want to be handed a big chunk of debt that because your spouse has argued that you've been out spending, and it also doesn't look good. So you don't also have to cut back, but just be careful about doing anything new or significant. And now I'll turn it over to Robin to talk a little bit about post-divorce.
Good evening, everyone. So nice to be with you all tonight. My name is Robin Young. I am a partner at North Star Financial Planning, a fee-only wealth management firm. And my role in this wonderful team is to help individuals who are going through divorce and a plan for the next phase of their life. So helping them create a financial plan, helping them understand what assets they have, as Barb was just talking about, and how that's going to support their future. So I feel, I don't know, Michelle, if you would mind going back to the money mindset, I would just like to talk about that for a moment because divorce is a huge life transition. And with life transitions come personal change, financial change, and that creates a lot of stress and overwhelm. So there's some transition truths that I'd like to just weave into this slide, seeing money as a tool for freedom, which I think sounds really great. I think for people who have never managed money, who may not be paying the bills or may not be managing the finances, have never made big financial decisions on their own for their first time, it can create a lot of stress a lot of fear and emotion. All of those things can actually decrease your cognitive capability. And so recognizing that if you're feeling emotional, overwhelmed, and that you're normally high functioning and could do 5 things at once, now you can only do one. That's a normal part of this transition journey. And you will get on the other side of it with some time and grace for yourself. My goal is to help clients get to that point where they can see money as a tool for freedom and working on that sort of new normal for themselves. But there's a passage, there's an ending, and all of that comes with grief and emotions. So give yourself some grace if it's taking you longer to do things. Focus on abundancy and not scarcity. Again, that I think is talks a little bit about financial well-being and confidence and really understanding where you are on that spectrum and working with a team that can support you wherever you are in that spectrum so that you can see this transition as an opportunity to move forward in a wonderful way. I'm going to talk about financial independence in the next section. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of money and mindset is that there's a lot of talk here about legal stuff and financial jargon and the technical answer of a settlement, maybe the money. You can see 2 sides of the column, what he gets and what she gets, but decisions are made on the personal side. And so really uncovering how you're feeling about certain things and working with someone to really get a handle on that so that when you're making decisions on the financial side, that they support you long term. So what is it that you really value? What is it that you need that when you get to that new reality, you can move forward confidently? And we do a lot of work in the financial planning side of things on that. And I'm going to talk about the other things in the slides forward. So if you go back to, I could talk about the Quadro. The Quadro is a legal document and it's the retirement plan. So 401k, 403b, the ERISA governed plans that's how they get split is a Quadro. It's a qualified domestic relations order. And it's something that happens post-divorce. So you agree on a split of those assets. Post-divorce, you need to work with a Quadro specialist generally. It's generally an attorney who can draft an agreement that both parties would need to sign, both parties will need to pay for, which will split out that asset for the parties. You don't need a Quadro for an IRA. I generally do see some sort of legal document for pensions. So there's some special considerations with the Quadro if you're dealing with a retirement asset that I'm going to talk about when we get forward on the planning side. Okay. You've arrived, you've signed the document, you've stepped over that line, and you're legally divorced. You probably need to take about a month to sleep, but unfortunately, there are definitely some things that you need to do financially to get control of your assets. And the reason that you want to do that is, number one, you may need money from those accounts, and you can't get the money until you get the assets in your name. There may be time limits or restraints or things that you have to abide by in the divorce decree. So you want to make sure that you work with an advisor who can help you go through your decree, each paragraph, so you know what you need to do to satisfy the agreement. And what else I want to say about that? I guess that's really it. You just want to do that and set up a timeline with your advisor now, soon, later. That's one of the really important things so you don't get overwhelmed is to determine what has to be done now, what can be done soon, and what can be done later. So knowledge is power, and that's, there you go. Knowledge is power is talking about some of the things Barb was talking about. So you've already done a great job in getting your financials together. So that's an easy place for an advisor to work with you. So you have some sense of your budget, you have what your assets are. So putting that together in a financial plan that encompasses your financial goals. So retirement, maybe it's education for your kids. So building in all of what you want this next stage of life to look like for yourself and determining, does your plan work? Hopefully you've done some of that pre-divorce. I collaborate with Barb and the attorneys in helping my clients come up with that sort of formula so that they know what they need in the divorce settlement. So if you can work with an advisor pre-divorce to help you
get to this other side in a way that you're confident about where you're headed. But knowing your numbers is so key because that is how you build financial confidence. It's knowing that you can spend money on travel. It's knowing that you can take your kids places. It's knowing that you can spend money on yourself or that you don't have to work or that you have to work X amount. Knowing your numbers is going to be a key to securing your financial future and increasing your financial well-being. We talked about budget and retirement savings. So again, that is built into the financial plan that we do to determine, do you need to continue to save or are you at a point that you can pull from your assets? So where are you on that spectrum? And do you need to carve out some of the money that is invested and put it into an emergency fund? That really depends on every person's individual situation, how much they need in that emergency fund. But generally, as a starting point, maybe 6 months of living. So we definitely would address that. If we were to work together, if you work with another advisor, that is definitely something that I would spend some time on so that you can have some security for yourself. When you get divorced, you're no longer married filing joint. So from a tax perspective, you're going to either move to single or to head of household if you have qualifying dependents, making sure that you understand your new tax situation. Here at my firm, we're doing tax projections so we can help people adjust their withholding and know where, if they need to sell things, are they going to have a capital gain? Do they need to take money out of their IRAs, which is taxed at a higher rate? I saw some questions that maybe Barb and I could tackle at the end around picking which asset in terms of 401k versus house versus investment asset versus pension. We could talk a little bit about that, but it really is so dependent on each person's situation. Monitoring financial progress, markets change, life changes. There's so many things that change every year. Taxes change, that it is really important to keep revisiting your financial plan, and so that, again, you can feel confident about where you're headed and make sure that you stay on track. Maybe you need to save a little more. Maybe you can spend a little more if markets were up in a year. So it just helps to build that confidence and well-being. Now, monitoring your credit. Barb talked about building credit. And once it's built, running a credit report every year is something that we do with clients. There's so much identity theft going on out there in the world that you want to make sure that you're not at risk. Spending time on your credit and making sure that you're keeping your finances secure with passwords and multi-factor and all of that stuff is extremely important to ensure your financial security. And then professional help. It's really hard to do this stuff all on your own. And if you're the person that didn't have that experience to begin with, it's twice, 3 times as hard. Get your team together, find someone that you're comfortable working with, find someone who has experience and can translate a divorce decree to you, someone who might have some transition experience, helping you create that new normal for yourself and helping you identify those things that you value, and a tax professional. All of us here on this panel would refer you to people that could help support you. Okay, I need to drink water for this. How do I access my money? So the first thing is alimony and child support. So your divorce decree will outline how long your alimony lasts and how long your child support lasts and how much. Those are the first lines of income that you're going to have. The second is non-qualified accounts. So those are just general investment accounts that you might have, might be your checking account, savings account. It could be an investment account. So things that aren't in a retirement container, essentially. And so those assets are taxed at a lower rate generally than qualified retirement accounts. But it really, again, depends on your specific situation of where you are in your tax bracket. And so that's why also tax planning year to year is a really important part of this process, because it really needs to be integrated into your financial decisions every year. So which bucket do I take out from? Qualified retirement accounts, if you're someone who is under the age of 59 and a half, if you take money out pre 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. In addition, you have to pay taxes on every dollar of a qualified retirement account. But there are ways to get money out pre-retirement, pre-59 and a half. I'm doing that for 2 clients right now. It's called substantially equal periodic payment. And it's a way to structure an income stream from an IRA to you over generally a 5-year period. And so there are a lot of tax rules around it, and it really needs to be set up specifically. So you definitely would want to work with your financial advisor and tax person to make sure that's done correctly. And then also there is a divorce exception that you can take money out of an IRA, out of a quadro one time. You have to pay taxes on it, but there's no penalty. Just on that first time the money leaves that retirement plan from your ex-husband or ex-wife and moves to your account, you have a one chance opportunity if you need to do it and you're under age 59, have to get dollars into your hands if that's your only source of income or only way to get a paycheck. So happy to answer any questions on any of these items offline. If you want to email me or reach out to me. Pensions, those would need to be, if they're split, you'll get X amount of your ex's income for the rest of your life, but you can't access it until the employee's eligible to retire. And then you might have other income from employment, business, rental, real estate. So that might be another, you might be working or plan to work, figuring those things out. How are you creating that paycheck? You are generally eligible for Social Security if your ex-spouse was eligible. You have to have been married for 10 years and you need to be over age 62. And so these rules can be very specific also. So I would definitely spend some time determining, getting a Social Security statement. You can call Social Security to understand what your benefit might be. But basically, you get 50% of your ex-spouse's full retirement benefit or your own benefit if it's higher. And so that needs to be built in your financial plan so that you can make sure that, you're set up for retirement, that you're planning on the right amount of income stream from this source. And then lastly in my section is when to change beneficiary designations. And you want to change those right away. If your ex-spouse was listed on your IRA, 401k, life insurance, annuity, any of that stuff, they could inherit if something happened to you, those dollars. So you want to get those changed. That's on one of the now items that I mentioned as soon as possible. So once you get those assets in your name, you want to make sure you update all of those things. And reviewing your estate planning documents again to make sure that you have this pot of money now, that's your financial future. And if you have children, the legacy that you're leaving, you want to make sure that it's set up correctly, making sure that you're working with someone that can help you with that. And then any special considerations that you might have for your minor children, whether it be special needs or anything that might come up there. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to move on over to Laura Gamache. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks much. I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Gamache. I am a residential real estate broker. I am licensed in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And I will just second what many have said before, just having that team behind you. We work very closely with many people here on the panel because we all go hand in hand and need each other's help and really wrap ourselves around yourself, the client, and can really get what's needed information from each of us to really know how to position yourself best moving forward through whatever stage of the divorce that you're in. Definitely pulling us in the sooner than later approach for sure. I'm pretty sure all of us can say that no matter what kind of phase or position you're in right now, the more, that you reach out to us in the earlier stages, the easier a lot of that can be, since a lot of this is can be very timely, but having that information from us at that point can really definitely help. So just kind of the key kind of financial pieces around the marital home. Of course, majority of the time for many, it is their most valuable asset, right? So it comes down to what's the question that kind of is lingering is what's going to happen with the house, right? So was someone going to be keeping the house? Is one keeping it and buying out the other party? Is it need to become down? That's we are sitting on what needs to be divided of that asset, and or should we need to be selling it? When do we need to sell it, right? So should we try to sell it before the divorce, after the divorce? all those different questions really just come down to where things are at and what makes the most sense and needs to be done with the division of that's been mentioned before with all the numbers, et cetera. So I've sold houses at varying stages of the divorce. Sometimes it's happening, we're getting everything finalized and being written into the divorce agree to sell this within X amount of time, et cetera. Or sometimes it needs to be handled prior the leading up to divorce. But again, all of that can vary, but just really having that, making sure there's a game plan in place as we go through that to really can make sure that people are set up with their finances in the best way and strategy and having that game plan and already, just because it can be as things kind of progress, needing to just know, okay, if we're selling the house, what's going to happen if you're selling the house and moving forward. The biggest thing, of course, is just have you had the market analysis? Have you had an actual agent come out and taking a look at the property, right? So estimates are not always accurate for sure. So don't always rely on that. But being that we'll just do a quick Zestimate or Zillow and whatever that says is going to be, it's not accurate, right? They can be very generalized, the radius on what they're pulling. So it can be really skewed very easily for coming up with a value. So making sure you truly have an accurate value on your property is just crucial as you start the discussions with the attorney, because they're a lot majority of the time, the attorneys are looking to me as they start the discussions with you and need to know what the figures look like, right? What's the house worth? How much is owed on the mortgage, right? What else is there? Do you have home equity lines? What other things are there that they have to really know and what's in the full picture as they're talking through the numbers? Market analysis versus an appraisal. Market analysis is done by a licensed agent. So our job is to give you a market range based on comps, et cetera. Making sure you have an experienced agent is extremely crucial. Someone that really knows the market, has been in the business for a length of period of time, and is local to the place and to the where you're selling. Having somebody that's a friend of a friend and has their license. When you're just discussing something as crucial as this, you really need to have someone that's really an unbiased party coming in and really giving you something of concrete information that can really be made sure. I've had to go to court for divorce situations to present my market analysis. So you just need someone that actually can stand up and is familiar with the divorce process and what that takes to really give you something of a crucial market analysis. We typically don't charge for a market analysis as being an agent versus if getting an appraisal out there is a fee. And sometimes if they can't come to terms on a sales price, sometimes each party are having their own market analysis done. If they can't come to an agreement, then typically sometimes what's being suggested by the attorney is they need to go pay for an appraisal to come out. So a licensed certified appraiser is someone that's going to come out, provide a 40-page report and giving you a one number for a value, right? Versus an agent, we're saying, hey, here's a little range that we give typically within a 20 grand kind of window, typically more or less depending on the price point. But as an appraiser, again, typically $700, depending on the property of what you're going to be charged, and they're coming out and they're giving you an exact number. Distribution of marital assets, impact of capital gains, taxes when the house is eventually sold. Of course, like these ladies have already spoken to that. Of course, really taking into consideration if one party is taking the property over, right? And now they're going they're going to be owning it, obviously married, and then now they're going to be obviously going to be single. However, their status was by the end of that year is how they have to claim on their taxes. So just taking consideration moving forward at that point, obviously going from your kind of marital status to now a single status. So moving on to the next slide, a little segue into if someone is actually going to be buying the home, right? If you're going to be trying to look for buying the property, buying your spouse out, what that looks like. Again, what these ladies have spoken to is knowing what your finances look like is, again, very crucial. So do you know what your total living expenses post-divorce is going to look like, right? So you just need to know what that's going to look like so that can segue into, can you afford the house on your income? There are many times that people put their emotions ahead of time and saying, I'm keeping the house, I'm keeping the house. They negotiate with their attorney. It's in the divorce decree, et cetera, all hashed out and agreed upon. And then lo and behold, they turn around and they can't even afford the house. And now they get themselves in this ginormous pickle of what are they going to do and how can they do this? So really just knowing and talking to us in a very early stages, just for have those simple conversations is crucial for sure. And Renee will segue more into that, into the mortgage realm of it. But again, just knowing what those expenses are, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. What is that? Can your utilities, maintenance on the properties, right? Owning a home is comes with maintenance, right? So it's just what do those costs look like for that maintaining? Like I said before, have you spoken with the lender to chat on if you can actually purchase the property? Like I said, you're buying the buying out the spouse. And a lot of people have this misconception of what the current interest rate is and wanting to buy out, right? So if you have a current interest rate of 2.0, right? What many people do that I run into, they don't understand that that's going to be gone if you're going to be having to do the refinance, right? And you're taking a party off of the mortgage. Some people think in this kind of thing that you're just dropping this person, they just go away. Not quite the case, right? So it's kind of other things that kind of keep in the sense that if you're having to do that refinance, like Renee will chat more also, you're at today's interest rate, not your 2.0 interest rate. So keeping those kind of key kind of components as well. And like we've already touched upon, the capital gains and taxes, et cetera. Moving into if you're coming down to selling the home. So like I've already mentioned, knowing that home value, having a comparative market analysis is so crucial. Market timing, right? Really knowing where are we in the market. So are we in a seller's market, a buyer's market, et cetera, right? We here in New England are still in a very much of a seller's market. However, things have been softening for some time now. So you need to really making sure that you're, again, no one can ever time the market perfect. However, just knowing what type of market you're in is very important. So you can make sure you're making the best decision. You're not landing yourselves into kind of trying to sell this home right smack dab in the middle of the holidays. But again, things can vary depending on the type of markets that they are. Again, like I mentioned, here in New Hampshire, we only have about 1,300 single families on the market right now. So that's not a lot as a state, so to say. Our median sales price in New Hampshire right now is 5.25, right? So if you're looking to just knowing where your house lands in that as well. So our average days on market has definitely been ticking up. So our average days on market as a state is now at 45 days. So when I'm saying timing of that market as well, it's lining all of that up of how long is my home going to sell. Whereas not homes aren't flying off the market like they were for many years. We're seeing some homes that are taking some time now, depending on the price. So that kind of just, again, that timing of making sure you really can kind of line things up accordingly. Your post-divorce living, of course, is like we're selling the property is where are you going to? Do you need to find something, right? So you need to find a purchase. So that is very crucial, like that we're selling and now you need somewhere to go. You going into a rental? Are you purchasing? If you're purchasing, do you need the proceeds? Is it subject to the home sale? And having those conversations so you're not getting to having to sell the house and then you're homeless and have nowhere to go. Just again, having those upfront conversations and game plans so we just know what we can best position yourself. Preparing the home for the market, run into this all of the time. That, of course, if it's been a very stressful time in the home and going through divorce, a lot of the times we're running into many things that have been deferred maintenance, right? The focus obviously has not been on maintenance on the properties. So do we need to really go and get this house ready for the market and get some repairs done? Keeping track of everything that you've spent for that, because I have had leading up to the closing, and I've had laundry lists of receipts that I've had to go and type up for the attorneys to go present so we can make sure all of that gets reimbursed to whomever or however that needs to be divided for whomever's paid for any of that during the divorce to get the home ready. So we can make sure that your funds, if you've done that and that's been agreed upon, that you're being reimbursed or it's being however it's being discussed. But keeping track of those is also very crucial to make sure that we kind of make sure that you're set up and on the financial side that's agreed upon that you're being reimbursed or taking consideration as we're deducting from each party's more or less division that's being accounted for any of those repairs that need to be paid for by either party. So I think I'll pass it over the baton over to Renee. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Great information as always. Good evening, everybody. I'm Renee Coleman. I am a residential mortgage lender and I'm a certified divorce lending professional. I work in divorce every day and to help my clients understand all of their options when it comes to the mortgage. So you'll see that there is a lot of overlap in all of our professions and the things that we can help you with. So when we start with a full financial picture, we're talking about inventorying everything, all of your assets, all of your liabilities, because they're all going to be split, right? And in order to split something, we have to have values on them. So you heard Robin and Barb talking about your retirement accounts and how those get split. And your one of your bigger assets, your home, may be even bigger than your retirement accounts in some cases. And like Laura mentioned, we have to get a value, so either an appraisal or a CMA. And we're gathering lots of documents. Where you need documents for everything. And I always tell my clients, consider collecting 2 copies of everything. You'll need them to fill out the divorce financial picture. You'll also need them for your mortgage, right? Depending whether you're buying your spouse out, keeping the house, selling the house, buying another house, even renting. You'll still need to have those financial documents available. And this time of year, you likely have all of those documents handy as we're smack in the middle of tax season. So I remind folks, just keep copies of everything. Learn where things are, where your assets are, so that they can have a value attached to them. Evaluating your housing affordability early. You've heard a few panelists tonight talking about the earlier you talk with us, the better. The same applies for your house and your mortgage. No matter whether you're keeping your house, selling your house, owning it jointly for a time, buying out a spouse, all of those things, you need to understand your options up front. Laura mentioned that if you want to keep your house and you want to buy your spouse out, what does that mean? What is buying your spouse out? If you, let's say you have a house that's worth, let's say it's worth $400,000, and let's say you owe $300,000. That means you've got equity of $100,000. That $100,000 is going to be split. And whether it's 50-50 or whatever the split is, I'll use the example of 50-50. There's $100,000 in equity. You get $50,000 and your spouse gets $50,000. So if you're keeping the house, you will need to pay your spouse their share of that equity, that $50,000. So when we talk about mortgages and understanding the affordability, excuse me, in my example, we have a $400,000 house with a $300,000 mortgage on it, and now you're the spouse wanting to keep the house, and we owe the departing spouse $50,000. From a mortgage perspective, we would do a new mortgage for you for $350,000. So the $300,000 would pay off your existing mortgage, and the $50,000 would be the buyout to your spouse. So that $350,000 mortgage, you have to qualify for that. You have to know you can get a mortgage, and it would be considered a refinance. Whether you're on the existing mortgage or not, it would be considered a refinance, and you would get the cash out to buy out your spouse. So talking with your lender early to understand your options, right? Once you sign that final divorce agreement, that's it. There's no going back. And so we want to make sure, if you're speaking with your attorney or your mediator and you've decided, that you would like to keep the house, let's make sure that you qualify for that. Your attorney, if you tell them that's what you want, that's what they're going to negotiate for you. But in the end, if you now have a settled divorce agreement and you have a requirement to either refinance the house or buy your spouse out, and you haven't spoken to a lender yet, I hear it every day. Every single day I get phone calls, and they didn't realize, they didn't know that they needed to qualify for that. So they're talking with us early, again, is really going to put you in the best position for post-divorce. Next slide, please. All right, so qualifying for a mortgage. So part of what we would do is help you understand what you can qualify for. And one of the biggest questions I get asked is, can we use support, whether it's child support or alimony, to qualify for a mortgage? And the short answer is yes, you can use it. But there's some rules around it. The guidelines require that it's documented, it's stable, and it will continue. And so documented just means that the lender has to be able to see that you have received. If the support is $500 a month, we have to show that you've received it for received $500 a month. The stable piece means most mortgage programs are going to require that we can show that you have received it for at least 6 months before we can use it as income to qualify you. So that's the stable piece. And the continuance piece is it must continue for 3 years in order to use it as income. So making sure that you're talking with us to understand the biggest error that we see a lot of is we get the final divorce agreement and a client comes to me and says, okay, I was awarded the house and I have 60 days to refinance and remove my spouse. But we need their support to qualify them. We can't do it in 60 days. We have to show that you've received the support for 6 months, right? So 180 days. So again, to prevent that from happening, talk with us early so that you understand the guidelines. We're going to help you. We all work as a team with whoever else is on your divorce team. So we can talk with your attorney or your mediator to help write up your final settlement agreement so that the terms, we can accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Generally, what's a legal option isn't necessarily a lending option. So we want to make sure that we have the right wording in your final settlement. Protect your credit. So I know a few of the others talked about your credit. We're going to do a deep dive on your credit. We want to make sure that all of the items on your credit are accounted for in your settlement. We open credit cards, and sometimes I know I never remember, is that card in my name? Is it in my spouse's name? Am I an authorized user? Is it my account? Is it his account? That's what a credit report's going to tell us. It's going to tell us what's in your name and how that card is being held as an individual, as a joint, as an authorized user. So we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to look at how many credit pulls there have been and making sure that there's no fraud happening, right, under your name. And so in order to maintain your credit score, we want to make sure that all our bills are being paid on time every month. And that's something that gets neglected. We know you have a lot on your plate as you're going through this process. There's a lot going on, and you may or may not have been the financial person in the household, right? Everyone takes on different roles in the household, and you may not have been the financial person. However, going forward, you will be, right? Your new household, you will be the financial person. And in order to protect your score, we need to know what debts are in your name, and we need to make sure that they're being paid every month. So just be mindful of that. And also being careful not to close any accounts without talking to your lender first. Closing accounts is going to have a negative effect on your credit score. So we want to make sure that we're not putting a mortgage in jeopardy by closing any of those accounts. Okay. So managing your debt division. So that just means what we were just talking about, all of the debts that are on your credit report. We want to make sure that they're being addressed in the final settlement agreement, right? There may be a credit card that's in your name, but it may have been the household card that was used for household expenses. And we want to make sure that's addressed, because when a lender pulls your credit and we're looking to qualify you for a mortgage, there's going to be questions. The lender has to debt you for anything that's in your name. But if the other spouse is responsible for that, we have to make sure that it's written up correctly in the divorce settlement agreement. That's all I'll say about that. Again, just talk with the lender early. And preserving home equity, again, capital gains tax, that's a big one that people forget about. If you're the spouse keeping the house and down the road you want to sell it, you could be on the hook for some capital gains tax. There's lots of rules around it, and we can help you understand that a little bit better and know the right questions to ask your accountant. And clearly stating your equity buyout timelines. So again, when we talk about the final divorce settlement agreement, we want to make sure that those timelines are written up in a fashion that we can accomplish what we're looking for as far as a mortgage goes. All right, budgeting. I know, and nobody likes that word. I get it. Nobody likes budgets. But it's going to be super important to understand the budget going forward and what your new reality post-divorce is going to look like. So creating that realistic post-divorce housing budget. So again, talking with a lender, we can run all the scenarios for you so you understand all of the options and what the numbers look like. And you can then go back to someone like Barb and say, okay, these are my options. These are what the numbers look like. And Barb and Robin can help you understand future cash flow and whether it's going to work for you financially for your future. And then aligning, like we talked about, aligning your legal and financial and lending strategies right before finalizing that settlement agreement, because that's, again, once it's finalized and signed, there's no going back. So that's it for me on the lending side. I am going to turn it over to our final speaker tonight.
I'm Michelle Papandrea. I am a certified divorce coach. That was, again, a lot of information and possibly very overwhelming. As a coach, I do generally focus a lot on the emotions, and I'll stick to the overwhelming piece of divorce. So if you're like me right now, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all that really valuable information. I don't know where to begin. How do I begin? Who do I need to hire? What do I do? Working with a coach, like, I'm here for you. I'm here to walk side by side through everything you just heard. I'm not an expert in those things. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CDFA, realtor, etc. But obviously I have access to refer you to them. I sit through these every month also. So I learn every month more and more information to help guide everybody and make sure you have the right resources available. We set goals. We certainly can start your budget. I have a spreadsheet so that I find the more clarity that you gain, the more confidence you have, especially if you're contemplating divorce or you're really in the beginning. It's so overwhelming. You don't know what to do. And that's what a coach is here to do, is to bring it all together for you. We also save you money. We have a much lower hourly rate. And personally, I'm available via text once in a while just to do quick check-ins, help you. What does this document mean? And if I don't know, then obviously I have this wonderful group of ladies to ask questions to. And I'm going to leave it at that because we're on the half hour. I don't know if there were any other questions that we can help you with. Again, it was a lot of information. Our concierge team is going to be reaching out to you over the next couple of days. And you got everybody's email except mine. I'm going to put it in there. And you can email us or you can get in touch with concierge to schedule any appointments with any of us. And you can always go to the vestadivorce.com website and find us.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. If we can take down the slides, Michelle, so that our contact information is available on our background. So if anybody is looking to reach out to us, thank you for joining us tonight. I know we went a little bit over time, but I know there was some great information there. You can reach out to either of us, any of us individually, and you can also reach out to the concierge, Mandy, that you met earlier. She will be reaching out to you anyways, but in the meantime, if you are looking to get in touch with any of us, you can do it directly or you can do it through the concierge. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you got some good information, and check out Vesta's website. You'll see lots of other hubs with other presentations. You are welcome to attend as many as possible, as many as you'd like, to learn more about the process. Thanks for joining us and have a great night, everyone.